So we've been asked a lot since doing this whole malt series, what's the best approach if you want to start a recipe from scratch? And so today on the Genus Brewing channel, we're going to do just that and find out what the steps are that you're going to take to, if you have an idea or you just want to kind of brew something, what do you want to do to build a recipe by yourself instead of having to go online and look at somebody else's recipe?
Inspiration can come from a lot of places. It can come from maybe you read a recipe from a book or somewhere, maybe you saw a publication, maybe you're just trying to build up a new style.
Or maybe you're thinking about beer and you're out trying something and you just want to see if it can work in beer. Those two things can collaborate. And so the things you want to focus on in inspiration are, first of all, is there a base flavor that you're going for? Is it going to be like a sweeter, maltier beer? Are there specific flavors in there? Like you're eating a banana cream pie or something like that, or a key lime pie, and you're like, I want to see if I can put this in beer. Or does that inspiration come from a beer that you tried?
Something that might be drier, something that might be bitter. There's a lot of flavors that are going to come out of beers, and part of finding that inspiration is actually figuring out what flavors you want in your beer.
Yeah, and so we'll throw aside the coming up with inspiration based on a beer style for a little bit later, but let's say you come up with inspiration for a beer flavor. First of all, you got to think about key features of the beer that you're trying to make. Those key features can be something like clarity. Do you think it's going to be a nice crisp, clear beer, or is it going to be something that fits better into a hazy style? What else?
Is it going to be a bitter beer? Is it an IPA? Is it a pale ale? Is it those are bitter beers, I guess.
Yeah, or the opposite. Is it going to be, do you want not so much bitterness so you can focus on other flavors? Alcohol percentage, you need this to be, if it's a winter beer, you're trying to get a warm, fuzzy feeling inside, you got to go for that high alcohol beer for sure. Or maybe it's a summer beer.
Yeah, if it's a session beer, you're definitely going to want to stick on the low end, which is actually going to change the recipe quite a bit.
Yeah, and then you got to think about colors. What colors fit your themes? Are you trying to focus on, let's say, the phenomenal red colors behind a berry if you want to add a fruit to it, or do you want to kind of just go big and dark? So a lot of things to think about when it comes to inspiration, but it's important to focus on those key features when you're going into the whole recipe building process. So let's start that recipe building process from two different perspectives. The first is going to be, let's say you know a style that either you've seen and you want to emulate, or let's say you have seen a style that other people have brewed and you have no idea what it tastes like. Either way, there's one place to start.
So research is where you start with any recipe. This can most likely come from online research these days, finding other recipes people have built that might have similar flavor profiles, but also just going out, especially if it's a style-specific beer, and finding good examples of that style and drinking it.
Yeah, and there is one fantastic resource for finding, what goes into that style or what styles you should look for to drink it, and that is the Bjcp. So let's get on the computer real quick here. We'll pop up a screen of our computer so you can see what we got going on here. And we're just going to pull up, hold on just a second here.
For those of you unfamiliar with the acronym that Peter just threw out there, Bjcp stands for the Beer Judging Certification Program. These guys are pretty awesome in setting not just national standards, but global standards of beer styles and really what they should be.
So here I have the Bjcp pulled up on a PDF. If you don't know how to do that, you can go ahead and go to good old-fashioned Google. The most recent is the Bjcp 2015 style guidelines. So that's what I typed in Google, and lo and behold, it is the first thing that pops up for me. So that's where we are. Let's go ahead and make sure this is nice and big so y'all can see what we're doing. And Logan, what style of beer should we look up today if we're going to look into how to build this?
You know what? Let's just get crazy. Let's go with a Lichtenhainer.
All right. I'm pretty sure I know how to spell Lichtenhainer. Oh, thank God I only had to spell the leak part. So that's going to be on page 55 under 27. Historical beers. So we'll just go ahead.
Kentucky Common would have been another fantastic one.
Oh, that is a good one. So Tenhainer, Lichtenhainer. Bet you this is the first time you're going to learn how to make a Lichtenhainer. We got to be one of the first YouTubers to be like, have you guys thought about making a Lichtenhainer? Well, here we go. All right, so we have historical Goza right there. I'm just going to scroll down until I see it highlighted because it should be highlighted, I think, if I know how to search things. Maybe I'm wrong. Historical beer, Lichtenhainer, there it is. All right, overall impressions. This is a sour smoked lower gravity historical German wheat beer. So as far as I know, you've made one of these, and I've had some commercial examples actually. And this is a 100% wheat beer, as far as I know. But let's go into looking at things like. The nice thing about this is they have characteristic ingredients. Oh, so it does say smoked barley malt. I was wrong. So smoked barley malt, wheat malt, and then take a pause.
Damn it. Really? Genus Brewing, this is Logan. How can I help you?
Telemarketers. Sons of guns. All right, so
It says
back
it's
to
a
the
smoked beer, by the way.
back to the Lichtenhainer. This says what? Says what?
It says it's a smoked beer.
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah.
Lichtenhainer, a sour smoked lower gravity historical German wheat beer.
Oh, you were saying all wheat malt. Yeah, 100% wheat malt.
Yeah, no, as far as I knew, because that's the commercial example that I had. The person who was the brewer told me it was 100% wheat beer. Now that's apparently he was wrong. So uses smoked barley malt, which is what you did when you did your Lichtenhainer. Smoked barley malt, wheat malt, lactobacillus, top fermenting yeast, and grists vary, but the wheat would typically be 30 to 50%. So that's pretty typical of wheat beers.
Yeah. Standard Hefeweizen or even American wheat.
Yeah, so now we have an example or a good idea of what we need to be using in terms of ingredients in there. Let's go into some flavors just to make sure we kind of have an idea what we're looking for. You got smoky aromas, some sourness, some medium to low fruity esters. So we're looking for probably, maybe not the most neutral German strain, but it sounds like the German strain's going to be pretty good.
Something typical of, K97 or 1007 or Kaiser.
Yeah, all those. If you want to find out more about K97, we did mention it in our most recent Fermentus, all the Fermentus yeasts video.
Just spilled my tea.
They do have appearance, so you're looking for a white rocky head. That sounds like a wheat beer to me, yellow to light golden color. So we're getting some good ideas on the Bjcp of what we're going for. So after you've kind of gotten that down, if you need to do more research, then definitely go and look up other people's recipes and then kind of take some stuff from there. And this goes back to kind of close out the research section of this. There's a lot of things you can do in terms of fruiting or chocolating or whatever, adding whatever flavors. So just do your research and come up with some ideas before kind of jumping into it. And then the best case scenario is you can ask somebody who's done the same thing first what their experience was. We're fortunate enough to, when people make beers, they come in and tell us how it went, what failed or what didn't fail.
Because I think, for instance, a great example with this Lichtenhainer is that while it says it has smoked malt, it says it has lactobacillus in it, it doesn't exactly tell you, what portion of smoked malt to use or necessarily how to inoculate it with your lactobacillus. And what it comes down to is there's going to be usually a variety of ways, different kinds of smoked malt, as well as, kettle souring versus true souring with the lactobacillus.
Or even fake souring if you really need to, kind of cut corners and you're not really confident in your souring techniques. How do you do all that?
Yep.
Talk to somebody who's done it before.
That's exactly what you're going to do. Or find some recipes online that worked well for other people.
Absolutely. So now that we have kind of an idea of what we're trying to make, let's just go ahead and jump into the building part of the recipe. And the software that we prefer to use to build this recipe is Brewers Friend. Brewers Friend's been our friend in the brewing. That was really cheesy, or was it good?
I don't know. Are we trying to advertise for them?
No.
They're not actually paying us, but we're basically advertising for them.
You know what? They are who we use just because I think it's a really good social platform, and then it's really easy for us to link over recipes. If you send a recipe through Facebook, which, by the way, we do take recipes in over Facebook for people who are trying to come in and order stuff, or if they're just asking questions, that's fine too. And then it's really easy. For example, right here, it can say, I want this person's recipe to pop up, and then we'll be able to take that and edit it, or to look at it and give you guys
feedback. Send it back to you.
Yeah. So let's go into the very basis. We got to name it first, obviously. Logan.
Whoa! What are we calling this?
We're calling it Basic Leak Den Hainer. Like I think you nailed it. What I typed in, right? And I never really start recipes with 5.5 gallon batch size unless I'm doing an IPA, because I know there's going to be a lot of loss from hops in an IPA. But with the Lichtenhainer, there's not a lot of hops. It doesn't sound
Yep.
like. And so we're going to go ahead and go with 5.25. That's accounting for some loss in yeast and still trying to get that full 5 gallons.
Yep, for your fermenter, yeah. Beautiful part, actually, of Brewers Friend. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but it'll actually calculate for hop loss for you.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention because I've just done it so many times. But I do know that I'm not going to get 2.25 gallons of boil off. So I'm just going to put 6.5 pre-gallon, just a guesstimate right there.
Yeah, that's all going to depend on your system, by the way,
And
for how
let's
much
see,
boil off you have.
let's see exactly how smart Brewers Friend is right here. So we're going to go ahead and type Lichtenhainer into the subcategory.
Boom, nailed it.
Lo and behold, Brewers Friend has it right there. And here's a really nice thing about using Brewers Friend. You already have an indication of color. They show that right here on the right-hand side. But if you click more, you can go down here and they'll give you all the specific things that you're looking for. So we can see right here we're looking for 3.5 to 4.7%. The original gravity can go up to 1.04. It looks like a low final gravity, so that tells us something about how we want to build this beer. And then also things like the color, straw yellow, looks like kind of basic there.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, something to note, actually, too, is that this style, just like any style, will give you a range.
Yeah.
So within the style, there's obviously a lot of wiggle room, and so depending on what you want to do with your beer, you can fall in the middle of the range, or you can fall one side or the other.
Right.
And it'll still be technically to style.
Yeah, and sometimes even if you're just going for a flavor compound, which is perfectly fine, and you don't want to nail the technicals of it, going with an Imperial Lichtenhainer I don't think is a sin. I think you can go ahead and, if you want to make a 5.5% beer that's in this idea of a beer, you can still call it a Lichtenhainer. I'm not gonna say anything about it.
Oh no, where's the beer Nazi?
Yeah, beer Nazi. So first of all, let's go into fermentables. And there's a couple things we're looking at when we look into the fermentables. We know we need to hit 1.014 or thereabouts. We know we're looking to hit a very light color. So we're probably not going to be using any colored malts. Maybe some Vienna, but I don't even think Vienna is probably going to be what we're looking for. And we know we need smoked malt because it said it right here in, that's the wrong thing, right in the Bjcp style guidelines under ingredients. It says we need smoked barley. So that needs to be a part of it. So we'll go in here, and I'm just going to go ahead and give some space for 3 smoked malts. And then depending on the type of smoked malt you use, you might vary with how much you use. So for example, a peated malt, this is something that we know that you don't want to use very much of because it can get really aggressive really fast. But there's like Rauch malt.
Exactly. I was just about to say Rauch malt going to be much, much less intense than peated malt, to where, I'd say, throw like 3 or 4 pounds in there.
Yeah, technically Rauch malt you can use as a base malt. That's a very little known fact, but it's not it's a potent malt. It's definitely there. I don't want to use a ton of it, but it's not a malt that you're going to be overwhelming your beer if you use a lot of it. So.
Yeah, you're going to get a similar amount of smoke from 3 pounds of Rauch malt as you would from, depending on how much, what intensity of the peated malt you're using, somewhere like 6 or 8 ounces of that peated malt.
Right.
So peated malt, very, very, very potent versus Rauch malt that's going to be much less potent.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of playing with some general percentages here. Let's say we do use a smoked, like a Rauch malt. That's 3 Levabon, so that's going to darken us up a little bit, and then we know we're going to go fairly light on everything else. And so wheat, we know we need some wheat, and so classic malted wheat. And then, of course, your base, you can use Pilsner. Maybe we'll use Pilsner. Let's see.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Pilsner would actually be traditional.
Yeah.
Probably if we were to do it here, we'd actually use the Heidelberg malt from Best Malts. If you don't know about that, watch our base malts video.
Yep.
Lots of
fantastic
enzymes
malt, works really well.
For things like wheat.
And let's see where this puts us. So original gravity, it sees we're already too high, and so that lets us know if we're going for this classic 1.014, we've overshot. And so if we want to kind of down this just a little bit, maybe we go 3.5. I can keep that 3, and then let's go 1.5 here on the smoked malt. For the first shot, it's I'd probably rather err on the underside of a smoked malt flavor than on the overside.
Especially since this is a small beer too. Something I was going to say, you're changing it right now, the efficiency on it.
Yep.
Most likely with low alcohol beers, you're going to overshoot your efficiency anyway, just because you're basically pulling more of those potential sugars out of your grain bed.
And unfortunately, a lot of this is going to come down to experience. And so it's great to use this as a starting platform in building recipes, but you're going to get a lot better at building recipes the more you just practice it. And so what we're hoping to give you here is just kind of a jumping off point and say, hey, don't be afraid to just try to build a recipe and see what happens. And then run it by someone who's maybe a little bit more experienced experienced than you if you haven't done this yet, and then say, hey, does this look good? Would you change anything? And then kind of play with it from there. But as you get to know your system better, these things that's gonna affect how you build your recipe. So we know, for example, that we always get higher efficiency in general, but especially when we're doing low alcohol beers. So looks like we're still overshooting, especially with that increased efficiency. So this is going to be a pretty small beer overall, looks like. So let's go 3, 2.5, and then 1.2, 12.25. Just make it a really, really big smoky beer. That's what we're going for sure. So 6.75 pounds looks like it's going to get us right at that top end of that range. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we overshot that and made a bigger beer anyway. But let's leave it there for now and move on. One thing that I'm going to change right off the bat, just knowing the fermentability. If you're using 100% really sugary malts, basically malts that don't have a lot of body and dextrin to them already, there's a good chance that you're going to undershoot this gravity. And we do want to undershoot this gravity anyways, because it says here on the Bjcp style guidelines that
should be nice and dry.
Nice and dry, as low as 1.004.
Which is impressive.
Yeah. And so two things that tells us. One is going to be that we're probably shooting for a lower mash temperature. So we're going to shoot for, let's say, 148 for a mash temperature. Nice, and still has some alpha amylase. If you want to do a secondary, I always recommend doing a mash out temperature too of 162 degrees or higher if you can. But for the main part of single infusion mash, at least at 148, you're getting beta amylase in there to do some work. And so we'll talk more about that when we do mash rests video, which is coming up. But just know that basically anything below 150, like 144 to 150 is going to be a drier beer, and then going up above 154 is going to get you a really thick beer. And so right in the middle is where most people mash in, that 150 to 154 range.
Yep. When in doubt, mash at 150.
So that's I would say those two things are probably the most important things stylistically in this beer, but we do have some other things to finish out. For example, the yeast we already talked about. A good portion of that yeast, we know that this is a German style, so that tells us something. We should probably be looking for a German style yeast.
Probably looking for a German style yeast. So yeah, either, like I said, some German ale strain. You know what's interesting though is did it say necessarily that it's supposed to be an ale, or could you actually ferment it with a lager?
It actually did say that in the style guidelines. It says under characteristic ingredients, top fermenting yeast.
No, there you go. So classic. That pretty much narrows it down right there.
Yep. So you have German and you have ale right there in the description. So fantastic resource here with the Bjcp style guidelines. And why not go with the one that we mentioned in a recent video, that K97 that you already mentioned. And then we just got hops. So what do you think this says about hops?
You know, I don't think it actually mentioned anything about hops, but knowing that I brewed this before, that the acidity lends kind of a slightly zesty zing to it. I would say to stick with pretty traditional German hops, probably something in the Sauser type. So yeah, either Saaz, maybe like a Styrian Golding could work, considering we're only looking for 5 or 10 IBUs on that thing. So
all right, so we're gonna put 40 ounces of Citra.
Perfect.
Now we'll go ahead and go with like 2 ounces, because that's kind of classic. This is a historical beer, so classic old world styles will use something like one of the nobles, and for a low amount of bitterness. And so 3.5, I know the one that we have in hand right now is 2.8, and already at a 60-minute edition, that's kind of overshooting.
Yep.
I would say rack this 60 minutes more towards the end of the boil, but that's going to give us a little bit more aroma, and this is there's nothing in the style guidelines here that says hop aroma. It doesn't mention that at all.
Yep.
So we're going to keep that at that 60 minute, and then we're just going to adjust that down until we get into the IBU range that we're looking for, estimated of course. You can see at the top end we're going for 12, so this is a very, very low hopped beer.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just go down to 1, and then we got the things checked off.
Yep. I was going to say, on the top end, just a note, as you're trying to match a style, try to match the bitterness, the color, and the alcohol linearly along that style guideline. Don't, unless you're trying to go for something different, I really recommend that if you're going to have a higher alcohol beer, try to make it a little bit on the higher color side, as well as a little bit more IBUs to kind of back up that color and that alcohol, whereas you do the opposite on the low end of the spectrum.
Right, so he's saying stick to this side of the style guidelines, or this side of the style guidelines and kind of scale proportionately to keep that flavor consistent at least. So we've got a color approximation. We've got the majority of our recipe built. The rest of it comes down to water chemistry, which is honestly a whole different topic. So if you're brewing, in general, what we'll say right now is look for clean water. A lot of times if you have not so good tasting water, you can get just distilled water from the store and then maybe add some Burton water salts at a smaller percentage than they recommend for this cleaner style of beer, but just make sure you have some of those minerals in your water. And then if you're using distilled water, always add yeast nutrient as well. Just to make sure that you've got those trace minerals, zinc specifically.
Yeah. And for those of you extract brewers out there, just using distilled water works just fine for extract, because the extracts themselves are actually going to have plenty of minerality to give your beer the character you're looking for.
Yeah, and they usually have some sort of yeast nutrient complex in them too. That said, if you wanted to like get a hoppier beer using distilled water, it's never a bad idea to add a little bit of gypsum on top of that. But you should be okay making good beer with just distilled water and your extracts. All right, so yeah, our video cut out for a little bit, but I think we've gone over yeast hops, pretty much everything that it takes to build a recipe from this stage at least. Anything else we should go over before we close this out?
I would just say, a couple strategies for kind of fermentation and post-fermentation. One of those is going to be fining. If you got a yeast strain that tends not to drop out, but you still want clear beer, you're probably going to want to find that with something like gelatin or biofine or chitosan. And then also kind of knowing maturation times.
Maturation. Yeah.
And that's going to be highly style specific. Some styles might have a 2-week maturation time, which is how long it takes before you can drink them, where other styles, honestly, like smoked beers, might be a year or even more, especially when it comes to maturation.
Yeah, I would say a general rule is probably like higher alcohol beers, darker beers, sour beers, or things with smoke in them, generally speaking, can take a little bit of age, whereas hoppy beers specifically, I mean, you don't want to let those sit too long or else that hop can kind of turn a little nasty on you. One more thing about about Brewers Friend in general too is they have this brew function right here. So I gotta hit save. I'll hit save. But if you go to this brew function over here, put in your standard system stuff, it takes you to the step-by-step how to brew. So if you're relatively new to brewing in general and you still want to practice building recipes, Brewers Friend is a great crutch here because it'll tell you to take every single step that it takes to go into to brewing a batch of beer, I guess. Yeah, honestly, Brewers Friend is by far one of the most user-friendly but also comprehensive softwares that I have ever used, and that's why we use it here. Yeah, exactly. And you can go into like water chemistry, all sorts of stuff under the tools. The only other thing that I think we didn't really cover is if you wanted to like fruit or flavor beers. On those, they're very, very specific to what you're trying to do. So reach out to people and ask questions and see if they have experience doing the same kind of fruiting. We will do a video sometime on how to fruit every single kind of fruit that you put in beer, but not today. Thanks for watching. I think that's it. Like this video, subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time. Viva la tea. Viva la tea. This is really hot tea. I'm burning my tongue. Mine's cold tea and alcoholic. Oh, we should probably go make a video on mash stuffs now. That'd be good. Yeah. All right. Bye, folks. Stop the screen recorder. Stopping the screen recorder. OBS.